in my ministry. I gotta go deep in my ministry. I wanna go deep, deep ministry. I wanna go deep in the ministry. Okay, we're gonna go deep in the ministry. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Another night on Deep Ministry. We're currently doing revision. We can't just rush to letter 2. We're on letter 1. Last week we started revision part 1, and tonight is part 2. Probably we'll see where the Holy Spirit lead. I also want to do a revision from Deep Ministry's perspective. With some of the key points that has helped me, that is eye-opening, and just so for we not to be, I was thinking tonight, not just to be hearers, but to doers, things we can adopt in our daily life. And I'm thankful always. Every weekend I come, I have to give thanks for everyone who's listening. When I see someone 3 hours, 5 hours listening to these videos, I am so thankful, and knowing, I know I'm gonna say this again, if you find this channel, if somehow you find this channel, you were chosen by the Holy, you were sent here by the Holy Spirit, because what we discuss here is beyond, what would they say? It's, you don't hear it. It's not what we hear on a day-to-day, um in our day-to-day lives. This is deep. That's why this ministry is called Deep Ministries. And I'm just thanking you for your obedience. And I don't want you to just listen. I just don't want you to like. Please, I would love to hear your comments. I want, oh, are these letters helping you? How are they helping your spirituality? Because that's why we're here. We're here to grow. We're here to go back to who we really are, and going back to our Father, to that greatness that we are. We are not this body. We're energy, we're frequency. Oh my God. When the word says we're beautifully and wonderfully made, we have to understand what he's trying to say to us. But I thank you all on Facebook, on YouTube. Thank you all for your time. And, we're just going to go deep in the word tonight. We're just going to go forward. I thank everyone who, if you're listening to me right now, or if you will be listening after the live. So thank you all. We're going to continue. I don't know if we're going to finish letter 1 review and going to start letter 2. But I am excited also to go into letter 2 and see the what eye-opening, what revelation knowledge we're gonna have in these letters. Thank you all for watching it again, and with no further ado, we're gonna go into the word. Gonna go into the word. Okay, this always, I don't know why this always happens. Let me go back. What? What? Yes. Okay, okay, okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So last week we stopped. Um, we revised. We stopped at right here when Christ gonna describe his place in Israel. And here we go, my place in Israel. We already, and if you're listening to these and you'd be like, deep ministry, I already heard that. This is just a revision. This is just a revision of letter one. We just want to make sure we're not missing anything. I know I said it last week. This is just like the Bible. And the more we read it, the more we get more understanding. We see something we didn't see the first time we read it. All right. My place in Israel. This is the Christ letters, and this is letter one, and he's talking about his place in history. And I know if you're saying, what are the Christ letters? Please, you could go on our first letter on YouTube, on Facebook, and then you could understand what the Christ letters are. These are letters that was channeled by Christ through an interpreter for us at this time. All right. And I think there are probably 5 or 7 letters. I'm not sure. And we're on letter one. And we're doing a revision of letter one. So here we go. I must first point out that my life and person were briefly referred to in the history of the Jews, written by Josephus for the Roman governor and presented to the Roman Empire. Josephus briefly noted that Jesus, who attempted to overthrow law and order and the government of the Romans, was punished and crucified. It has been argued that this was some other Jesus recorded by Josephus, but this is not so. I, who later became the Christ, who performed so called miracles of healing and materialization, was the insurrectionist. He said he was the insurrectionist that Josephus, and a lot of people who are scholarly, they know who Josephus is. Um, I've I've never personally read his anything from Josephus, but I was reading stuff that mentioned him, that he knew Christ. They said Josephus knew Christ. And as Christ is saying to us today, that um, a lot of people, when they read Josephus' writing, they do not think it is the Christ, this Christ that he's talking about, because he said he was, this Josephus described Christ as fictitious and rebel rouser, and but he's actually acknowledging that it was him, the Christ. And he said, was the insurrectionist, but he said he was no rebel rouser. I did not deliberately stir people up to defy the Romans and disrupt the law and order. He said, against he was a rebel against the Jewish traditions and became And he said, I was a rebel against existing Jewish traditions. And because when I emerged from my 6 weeks sojourn in the desert, I saw a better way to think and live. And I tried to pass on my knowledge to my fellow Jews with little success. And I can understand, hear what he's saying. When you come into some form of knowledge, when you come into some form of enlightenment, and you see what your brothers and sisters are going through, you're trying to you're trying to tell them, trying to enlighten them. So because he tried to enlighten them, because he came in, he saw in that 6 weeks in the desert, he saw who our creator is, he saw who our God is. He came, he said, he described it as he was one with the universe, and he saw how beautiful we are, he saw how powerful we are, and he wanted us to know. So the Romans described him as a defiant of the Roman law, but he wasn't defiant. When your eyes are open, it's not just opening when you're all, it's open to all the deceptions that we live around that's caused the oppression of you and your people. So that's what he was doing when he walked the earth. He too, just like here, our eyes are opening, and we're opening to the things that we took for normal. It was just a normal part of life, and we don't understand how enslaved we are. So this is just Christ. So some writers describe him as a rebel against the roman the Roman back in the day. He wasn't a rebel, he was just trying to enlighten the people, like many are trying to do today. So he said, it is important for you to understand that pressure of public opinion weighed with with my followers. So he's saying that the disciples were under pressure of public opinion. Oh, wow. Whilst they truly believed I had brought a soul saving message to the Jews and was the Messiah, the Son of God, they were also of the world, trying to relate to the world as best as they could. Therefore, although they knew my reactive feeling towards the Jewish beliefs, they were not happy to despise with the whole Testament altogether, since it had supported and kept the Jews together throughout their history. In the interest of preserving what they thought to be valuable in the old dispensation, they suppressed any description of the person I was. And you could see Christ understood what was going on with the disciples when they wrote the Gospels, because and we see it today in the church. We see it today in the church where some some preachers and some men and women of God is succumbing to the politicians, you know. They don't want to rock the boat, even though they know it's not right. They just don't want to say anything or do anything to cause controversy. So he said, my disciples and Paul built their own edifice, sacred beliefs on what they wanted to preserve from my life and teaching. They only taught and consolidated what they deemed to be valuable to people, Jews and Gentiles alike at that time and in the future. And basically, he's just saying that they didn't want that part, the disciples and Paul, he mentioned, just didn't want the world to know that he wasn't the perfect perfect, all perfect. He was just as human as we are before his enlightenment. You know, he will go through it. He was a rebel child. He did not take all the what the Romans were dishing out against the people. I can see him as most people are today. Those people are bold, you know, bold to speak their mind, bold to speak their mind. That's what Christ was, you know, and to appease the Jews, to appease the Jews. Paul and the disciples, they try not to, because and what I'm thinking, because they probably wanted the Jews to accept Christ. They wanted the Jews to accept him. So they tried to show him in a perfect light. So they can accept that he is the Son of God. That's just what's coming in my mind. Consequently, because of all of this, they distilled what they could use and they let go most of what I termed the secrets of the kingdom of God, for they never understood them. For they never understood them. Wow. So he said the disciples and Paul, they distilled what they could use and let go most of what I termed the secrets of the kingdom of God. For they never understood them, nor found them desirable in the creation of a new perception of the divine, the Father. Oh, wow. They never understood it. They never understood it. And that's why they asked some of the questions that we read when Christ was on earth. They never understood the kingdom of God. Mm. To preserve the Jewish belief in salvation from punishment for sins by means of sacrifice in the temple, the person of Jesus was adopted as the supreme sacrifice who had paid for men's sins by my crucifixion. This belief served many purpose at that time. To preserve the Jewish belief in salvation from punishment for sins by means of sacrifice in the temple, the person of Jesus was adopted as the supreme sacrifice who had paid for men's sins by my crucifixion. This belief served many purposes at that time. It served many purposes at that time. It gave my death on the cross a valid and heroic reason. It proved to the people that I was the Son of God, who had carried out a specific mission to the very end of my life. This belief also proved to be great comfort to Jews when their temple was destroyed by the Romans and led to many converts taking place. Many sects of Jews and Gentiles also did not believe in life after death. Consequently, it was greatly comforting to hear that Jesus Christ had overcome death and retained his body. To much human thought at that time, life was not possible without a body. Therefore, life after death could only mean the resurrection of the body. Oh, wow. They're saying many sects of the Jews and Gentiles did not believe in life after death. Consequently, it was greatly comforting to hear that Jesus Christ had overcome death and retained his body. To much human thought at that time, life was not possible without a body. Even today, people can't expect, people don't think life is possible without a body. People can't wrap their mind around that this body is only for this earth. and that we probably live forever, ever, ever, ever. We do not die. We do not die. This flesh does, but we do not die. Therefore, life after death could only mean the resurrection of the body. And we can still see it even in the coming of Christ. Even in the coming of Christ, people thinking Christ is coming the way he was here. That's how the coming of Christ is. We have to open our mind and think big, because we just have God in this box. We just see him as ourselves. He's like us, but he's greater, bigger. And this flesh, Paul tried to tell us that,
Yes.
we've got to open up our mind.
Yes, our subconsciousness. Yeah.
Yeah, people can't imagine that after this, that after we die, that we still go on. We don't, it's just our flesh that's gonna die.
Yes.
That's why we're so fearful. That's why the church is so fearful. We think, I know my uncle, and he's Jehovah's Witness, he always tell me, once you're dead, you're dead. But no, you move on, you keep going, you keep going.
In the
That's why
spirit.
people say, oh, call people, oh, that's an old soul. That's an old soul, you know. Uh, So it also kept my name constantly alive in the minds of people. I was the historic figure who had valiantly died to ensure that men should be freed of all fear of hell and damnation, providing they believed in me, they would walk as freedmen. It is only because my name has been kept alive to this very day that I am now able to come to you and give you the truth I so dearly wanted to share with people 2,000 years ago. My early life and experience in the desert. I was born in Palestine. That's the same Palestine. That's the same Palestine. Same Palestine that the war is going on. I was born in Palestine. My mother was convinced that I would be a Messiah, contrary to popular belief. I was not a saintly child. When taken to the temple, aged 12 years old, to be interviewed by the chief priest to determine whether I would be fit to enter Jewish religious training, I was rejected as being too opinionated. Too opinionated. That's how I saw Christ. You know, those people who just don't scare to give their opinion. That's how I saw him. That's how I think he was. Bitterly disappointed, my mother took me home again and did her best to raise me in the sanctity which marked her own demeanor at all times. This was an impossible task, for I was above all things an individualist and unruly in behavior. I resented my mother's guidance and her attempted discipline. As a youth, I became unmanageable, a true rebel. Hmm? So when you see these children so falicky and we put our mouth on them and they're just being a child. That's how Christ is describing, that's how he was. He wasn't, there's no perfect child. There's no perfect child. Some kids, they're just a rebel and they'll grow out of it. I rejected my mother's staunch adherence to the Jewish faith and traditions, preferring laughter to sanctimonious attitudes. I refused to learn a trade which would have bound me down to routine. I choose to mix with all sundry of the poorer classes, drank with them, new prostitutes, new prostitutes, and enjoyed talking, arguing, laughing, and being bone idle. When I needed money, I went into the vineyard for a day or two. I took other jobs paying me enough to eat and drink and give me the leisure I craved. For all my many shortcomings as a human being, my careless, easy, indolent attitudes, my self will, and egocentric determination to think my own thoughts, irrespective of what others might try to tell me. I cared about people very deeply. I was deeply emotional. In your present speech terms, you could call me overreactive, over emotional. I had a warm, compassionate, empathic heart. I was deeply moved in the presence of sickness, affliction, and poverty. I was a staunch supporter of what you call the underdog. You might say I was a people person. I lived with them closely in a spirit of camaraderie. I listened to their woes, understood, and cared. It is important to understand my true origins and my early youthful characteristics because they were the goads which pushed and propped me into eventual Christhood. When I was strongly What I most strongly detested and resisted was the misery, the sickness, and poverty I saw around me. It infuriated me, and I became passionately, vociferously angry to see people dressed in rags, thin and hungry, diseased, crippled, yet heartless, browbeaten by Jewish leaders who burdened them with meaningless tradition, laws, and observances, threatening them with Jehovah's punishment if they did not obey. I declare to all who would listen to me that these poor people had enough to bear without being crushed by senseless measures restrictive of pleasure. What was the point of life at all if we were not born to be happy? I refuse to believe in a I refuse to believe in a just God according to the Jewish traditions. The biblical prophetic warnings of Jehovah's judgment and anger against people disgusted me. People were human after all, doing whatever their human nature prompted them to do. They had been born sinful, so why would they be judged and condemned to lives of suffering and poverty because they had broken the Ten Commandments? Where was the sense in such statements? To me, the Jewish belief depicted an illogical, cruel God, and I wanted nothing to do with him. It seemed to me that if such a deity existed, it followed that mankind was doomed to eternal misery. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's where we are today. People can't believe, but as I always say, um, the Bible is deep. The Bible is deep, and when we see all that judgment, and when you come into knowing who God is, it just you can't take that word literally. I don't believe that's God, and the punishment and the death. Oh my gosh, the death and the punishment. No, you can't believe when you come into the knowledge of who God is. You can't believe that's describing your Creator, your Father. What we read in the Old Testament, if you read it literally. The simplicity and freedom I found on the hillside, the plains, the lakes, and the mountains refreshed my inmost spirit and quieted my angry murmuring against the Jewish God. Consequently, I refused to believe a word that the Jewish elders tried to teach me. However, during my middle 20s, a new line of question took possession of my thoughts. As I walked ever more frequently alone in the hills, my rebellion was gradually replaced by an all consuming longing to know and to understand the true nature of that which must surely inspire and respire through creation. Yeah. In spite of his rebelliousness, he knew that there is just a divine power that moves through creation that moves through creation. I reviewed my lifestyle and saw what suffered my actions had caused my mother and many other people. Although I felt such deep compassion for the weak and suffering, my rebellious nature had prompted much thoughtless and selfish behavior towards my family. My underlying love for them now welled up in me, and I found myself becoming equally rebellious against my past behavior. Yeah, when you start to draw closer to God, that's all you take a look at yourself and see where you were. Yeah, and even you're not proud of it. I heard talk about John the Baptist and the work he was doing amongst the Jews who came to listen to his words, even from Jerusalem. I decided to visit him to be baptized myself. On my way to the River Jordan, I felt exhilarated at the prospect of being baptized and starting a new life. I knew that despite my unruly emotionalism, I had also been born with a keen intelligence and a gift for insightful, impressive debate, which I had used willfully and negatively, leading people into unruly arguments. I had thrown my talents away by pursuing a life of self will, idleness, and pleasure. As a result, I had forfeited all respect from others. Neither did I possess any respect for the respect. For the first time, I found this to be intolerable. It occurred to me that in the future, I could and must put my natural gifts to better use. Instead of just making a noise, perhaps I could find a way to lighten the burdens of those whom I so deeply pitied. Up to that time, I had been a little practical use to anyone. So this is just Christ giving us a background of his early years up to his 20s before he was baptized. And he was saying it even growing up. He was smart and argumentative, and he has this talent to win arguments. And the thing we learn from this is even if you have a gift and you're not using it for good, and you're not using it for good, because he was using it to rouse up people, to rouse up people, not using it to help. And he's letting us know, because even before he baptized, even before he become enlightened, he just know that there was just something in him, he had a special gift. And he's talking about his baptism now. When I entered in the water in the River Jordan to be baptized by John, I expected to feel nothing more than relief that I had. For once, I'll start over. When I entered the water in the River Jordan to be baptized by John, I expected to feel nothing more than relief that I had for once taken a positive step in reforming my behavior. So when you, let me tell you, when you come to God, you'll know how far He's going to take you. You just think He's going to take a step to reform in His behavior. I expected to feel a new determination to go home and astonish my mother and neighbors with my new kindly attitudes towards them. What really happened when John baptized me was an experience completely different to anything I'd ever thought possible. I felt a great wave of tremendous surge through my body. I was literally stunned by it. As I staggered out of the river, I felt myself elevated in consciousness in a most extraordinary way. A great inflow of glowing happiness uplifted me to a state of ecstasy. I was enraptured, and this word enraptured means give intense pleasure of joy. I was enraptured and aware of a great light. Mm, this was happening to Christ when he was baptized. Stumbling, I moved away from the river and walked, not knowing where I was going. I continued on seeing into the desert, on seeing into the desert. So this is giving us a glimpse. I know the Bible give us a glimpse. It said the heavens opened. The Spirit of God came down upon him after baptism. And this is what he said happened to him. Christ telling us happened to him after his baptism. He said he wasn't even expecting. He said um, he felt a great, tremendous energy surge through his body. He's, he felt a great energy surge through his body. He said, I was literally stunned by it. As I staggered out of the river, I felt myself elevated in consciousness in a most extraordinary way. A great inflow of glowing happiness uplifted me to a state of ecstasy. I was enraptured and aware of a great light. And he said, stumbling, I moved away from the river and walked, not knowing where I was going. I continued on seeing into the desert. He just kept walking and walking. He didn't even know where he was going. Seems as if his eyes was even closed until and into the desert. And he says, my 6 weeks in the desert were a time of total inner cleansing of my human consciousness. Old, old attitudes, beliefs, and beliefs were dissolved. Old attitudes, beliefs, and prejudices were dissolved. So it's going to describe his time what happened when he was in the desert. I know the Bible called it in the wilderness, and it is saying it was in the desert. Similar. The time has come for me to share with receptive people all that I felt, saw, realized, and understood. To help people abandon the age old imaginative pictures of a biblical deity, I will avoid referring to God by that word and will use a terminology designed to stretch your minds to embrace what really is beyond all earthly form, color, sound, emotion, and comprehension. And I think that's what God, we say God, but this is what God really is. Our mind, we can't even fathom what God is. And he says he's not gonna use the word God to describe what he saw. It says it's beyond all earthly form, color, sound, emotion, and comprehension. That's what God is. We can't, there's no word for it. Whoever come up with the word God, they didn't know how to describe him, so they just said God. What I felt when in the desert, I was uplifted into inner radiant light and felt vibrant and wondrously alive with power. I was filled with ecstasy and joy. I knew beyond all doubt that this power was the true creator out of which all things, out of which all created things had been given their being. Okay. This glorious interior harmony, peace, and sense of perfect fulfillment needed nothing more to be added to that beautiful moment was the very nature of the reality, the creative power giving life to creation and existence. What I saw, realized, perceived when in the desert, I was lifted into another dimension of conscious perception, which enabled me to see the truth concerning life and existence. I saw lucidly and clearly what was real and what was false in man's thinking. I realized that this creative power I was experienced was infinite, eternal, universal, filling all space beyond sky, oceans, earth, and all living things. I saw it was mind power. It was the creative power of mind. Oh, wow. Wow. There was no point where this divine creative power of mind was not. I realized that human mind was drawn from divine creative mind, but was only a candle lit by the sun. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. There was no point where this divine creative power of mind was not. I realized that human mind was drawn from that divine creative mind, that we get our mind from that divine creator, but was only a candle lit by the sun. So it's just a speck, that little speck, the candle in all of the creative power. Our mind is just a little candle, but it's still from that divine creative mind. That's why our mind is so powerful. Mm. At times, my human sight was so spiritually heightened, I could see through rocks, earth, sand. These now appeared to be a shimmer of tiny motes. And shimmer mean a tiny pieces of substance. So Christ is saying he was able, he's describing his experience in the desert. And he said he could see through rocks, earth, and sand. These now appear to be only a shimmer of tiny motes. And we're knowing, we come to realize that nothing is really, really solid. This is what this is saying. We're not solid. We're house. Everything is where we see around us. It's the frequency. We're energy. We're frequency. Nothing is really solid. You could see it depends on what level you're vibrating on your vibration. So you could see through things. And I know as we go along, he's going to tell you how he was able to heal. Because nothing, and when you're on a different level, you could see through things. You could see through solid things. Nothing is solid. Nothing. I realized, yeah, I didn't even read that. I realized that nothing was really solid. When I had moments of doubt that this could be so, the changes in the phenomena stopped taking place, and much later I discovered that. Okay, let me go read this again so it makes sense. When I had moments of doubt that this could be so, the changes in the phenomena stopped taking place, and much later, I discovered that my thoughts is strongly imbued with conviction could affect changes in the shimmer of modes, what science presently calls electrical charge particles, and therefore produce changes in the appearance of the rock or whatever I was studying. Wow. Wow. He said, let's read this again. When I had moments of doubt that this could be so, the changes in the phenomena stopped taking place. And much later, I discovered that. So this is what we talk about faith, because anytime if you're believing for anything and anything time that doubt comes up in our mind, it stops. Even if you meditate, and even you're meditating, you feel good, and then you feel like the presence of God, and if you start doubting, it stops. So this is what Christ said, that the power in our mind, if we believe anything without doubting, there's no limit to what we can do. Because he said we draw our mind from that divine creative power.
Yeah, amen.
We draw our mind from that divine creative power. Oh, wow. He says, when I had moments of doubt that this could be so, the changes in the phenomena stopped taking place. And much later, I discovered that my thoughts, if strongly imbued with conviction, could effect changes in the shimmer of modes. And the shimmer of modes, he said, scientists calls it electrical charge particles, and therefore produce changes in the appearance of the rock or whatever I was studying. It, it was at this point that I came to realize the powerful effect that conviction or unwavering faith had on the environment when stating a command or even a belief. Mhm, mhm. What was even more startling was my mind opening cosmic consciousness, realization that all I had been witness was really the creative power of divine mind itself made visible in the shimmer of tiny motes. So it says what he was when he was able to see through the rocks and all that, he was seeing the creative power of divine mind itself. That was, he called God, we call him God. This is how he's describing our creator, creative power of divine itself, made its divine mind itself made visible in the shimmer of motes. So it's just God made visible in the most tiniest of tiniest electrical particles. So what he was seeing is God made visible in that small, tiny motes. And we are God made visible in this body. Because we take our mind from that divine creative power. That's what he's saying. Not only this, its appearance could be profoundly affected by the activity of human thought. And that's why it keeps telling us that we Through our thoughts and through our mind, we create the problems in our lives. Whatever we have, whatever we're going through, it's through our own thoughts. We're doing it. It's us. Nothing from the outside is affecting what we're going through. It's all us. I realized there was nothing solid in the universe. Everything visible was manifesting a different state of consciousness, which determined the composition and form of the shimmer of motes. Therefore, all outer form was an expression of the inner consciousness. Let me just read this again. I realized there was nothing solid in the universe. Everything visible. I think scientists come up with this too. There's nothing solid in the universe. Everything visible was manifesting a different state of consciousness. Everything visible is just manifesting a different state of consciousness, which determined the composition and form of the shimmer of motes. Your consciousness determine your form of the shimmer of motes. The trees, the animals, it's just a different form of consciousness. Just a different form of consciousness, not that we're much more better than them. The animals, they're just a different form of consciousness. He says, life and consciousness, I realized, were one and the same thing. My gosh. It was impossible to say this is life and that is consciousness. Consciousness was life and life was consciousness, and were the creative power of both divine universal mind beyond, within, and behind the universe. This is a lot. We talking now, everyone talking about being conscious, being conscious, being conscious. I wonder if we really understand what we're saying. So Christ says, therefore, therefore all outer form was an expression of the inner consciousness. The inner consciousness, life and consciousness, I realized, were one and the same thing. My gosh. It was impossible to say this is life and that is consciousness. So look like once you're breathing, once you have life, there is a form of consciousness going through you, through your mind, a form of consciousness. And when we talk about consciousness, we're talking about the mind. The mind. What does your mind think? What does your mind know? You know? We get our mind, it says we draw our consciousness from that universal mind. That's why our mind is powerful. It's just a tiny, it says we're like a candle lit by the sun. That's how tiny our consciousness that we get from our Creator is. But it is still powerful. It is still powerful. And we have to realize that. And we have to learn to watch our thoughts and watch our mind, watch our thinking. Consciousness was life, and life was consciousness, and were the creative power of both the divine universal mind beyond, within, and behind the universe. That's what it is. Beyond, within, and this creative power and divine universal mind is what we call God. This is what we call God. I realize that people place highest importance on individuality and form. We do. Individuality and form, what we look like. They could not imagine mind or intelligence operating in any effective way other than through the medium of individual form. Okay. Okay. Let's start here again. My battery almost died. I realized that people placed highest importance on individuality and form. They could not imagine mind or intelligence operating in any effective way other than through the medium of individual form. That's individual form, that's in our body, that's trees, that's dogs, that's cats. Because of this, the Jews had created a mental image of a vast supreme being having all the attitudes, positive and negative, of human being. And even today, we still can't comprehend that God transcends this individual form. We still can't comprehend how God does not have anything to do with this form that we're in, other than his divine mind is part of that. He's not like us, he's not like us physically, but consciously is part of us. We always see God in our human thinking. And that's why I like that scripture. His ways are not our ways, his thoughts is not our thoughts. He said, as far as the east is from the west, so is our ways his ways. So we have to take him out to that human form that our mind have him in all the time. And it says, because of this, the Jews had created a mental image of a vast supreme being having all the attributes, positive and negative, of a human being. This was it possible for prophets to believe in and speak of Jehovah's angers, threats of punishment, visitation of sickness, and plagues in response to human waywardness. But these mental images, I realized, was myths. They did not exist. I perceived that in any dimension of existence, it was the mind, the intelligence exhibited, which was the all-important factor relating to creation and man itself. Therefore, Genesis should be written before creation was universal mind, the creative power behind and within creation itself. Having seen so clearly beyond all dispute that the creative power of universal mind was everywhere, within the infinity of the skies, and active within earthly form as well. I was inwardly directed to look around me and saw only gravel and rock. Then suddenly I was presented with a picture of a beautiful land in which were growing every conceivable plant, shrub, and tree, even birds. flitted in the trees, and animals grazed in the grass. And animals grazed in the grass. Watching this vision with amazement, I saw that plants, trees, watching this vision with amazement, I saw that plants and trees, every one of them, and yes, even birds and animals, in reality were composed of hundreds of communities of infinitely tiny entities. Your modern scientist calls themselves. Wow. So he was even able to see down to the tiniest cells. Christ did, working continuously in an entirely harmonious spirit of cooperation to produce the substance and various organs of the inner system and the outer appearance of the completed living entity. So he's just saying, like our cells working within us. That's where we got our cells. They said our cells create our organs, you know, and our organs create our system and then our body. So it's like watching the cells creating the heart or the lungs. So every minute thing in our body is alive. That's basically he's telling you. Up to the very cells in our body are its own entity. Wow. Wow. I contemplated this wonderful activity for a long time, although time was no longer of any importance to me. As I gazed and gazed, I thought, who would have guessed that within the outer coverings of fur, feather, skin, there was such intense activity within tiny communities of entities working together to give life, form, nutrition, healing, protection, endurance to the bodies of so many different species. It was the intelligently it was the intelligently performed work which attracted my attention. Therefore, work I realized was an integral part of the creative power activity, and the very least entity, the cell, within living systems to the most advanced entity in the universe, man himself. Really? Are we the most advanced entity in the universe? So, therefore, work I realized was an integral part of the creative power activity, from the very least entity, the cell, within living systems to the most advanced entity in the universe, man himself. In the systems of all living things, all the labor was under the direction, ultimately, of the divine creative power, in whom were the plans and designs of creation. All of this work, all of this work is under God. All of this work taking place is under God. I saw that these plans and designs were in reality consciousness forms and could be termed words, which each word signify a very special consciousness form. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. I saw that these plans and designs were in reality consciousness forms and could be termed words. since each word signifies a very special consciousness form. Hence, the original word in creative power consciousness becomes manifested in the visible world. The word, and therefore the consciousness pattern, remains within the divine creative mind continually, bringing forth its own. Oh, so is this what it says in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God? Oh, oh, I have to read this again, see what this is saying. This is what I'm telling you. I have to read this more than once because I always miss something. It says, I saw that these plans and designs were in reality consciousness forms and could be termed words. That's all the working that's going on under the divine creative power in ourselves, in our system, in our body, since each word signifies a very special consciousness form. Hence, the original word in creative power consciousness becomes manifested in the visible form. Oh, this is what it says in the beginning was the word. It says, hence the original word in creative power consciousness becomes manifested in the visible world. The word, and therefore the consciousness patterns, remains within the divine creative mind, continually bringing forth its own. Oh. Mm. So the inner working of everything, the consciousness forms that's forming, that's working in ourselves, that's working in us under the direction of the divine creative power, could be terms as the word oh, made visible, becomes manifested in the world, the word, and therefore the consciousness pattern remains within the divine creative power, continually bring forth his own. Okay. I could see then that everything in the universe did live, move, and have its being in the creative power of universal mind, which was infinite and eternal and was the only true reality behind all manifestation and individualized form. I don't know why I didn't highlight this. It said, I could see then that everything in the universe did live, move, and have its being in the creative power of universal mind, which was infinite and eternal and was the only true reality behind all manifestation of individualized form. I was filled with praise that everything in the world was out of and yet within the superlative creative power of divine mind. And it's called this creative power of divine mind. That's what we call God. I marveled at the secret activity. I marveled at all the secret activity forever taking place in all living things, including human bodies, and wondered how it was that such infinitely small units worked intelligently according to specified plans to produce unerringly. And this word unerringly means a way that is always accurate. The proposed formed. Example, tree trunk, leaf flower, fruit, insects, birds, and animals and human beings. Oh my gosh, this is mind-opening. This is what Christ, if you're just joining me, Christ is describing what was shown to him. I know in the Bible it described after he was baptized and he was taken away in the Bible call it wilderness. He's telling us that he was taken away in the desert, and this is what he saw. This is what he was able to see. The power of creation and the divine mind behind all creation. Not just us, they call us from the smallest to the more advanced, the smallest cells to the more advanced man. He was able to see the inner working, all under the direction of the divine creative mind, the divine creative power. That's the same thing. We call him God. He said he's going to say divine creative power. I then realized that even more clearly that the creative power was the very source of all intelligent activity in the universe. If mankind possessed intelligence, it was only because he had drawn it from the universal source of all being. Furthermore, I was shown that the divine creative power always worked according to certain fundamental and exact principles of construction. I love this. And I read it the first time. So that divine creative power always worked according to certain fundamental and exact principles of construction. I was shown that just as men have clear characteristics and well-defined nature in their self-presentation to the world at large, so did the creative power possess a clearly defined nature, distinct characteristics, which could be clearly recognized in the manner that all things, plants, animals, birds, men, were constructed and maintained. I saw that these principles and characteristics clearly observable in the process of creation were set, invariable laws governing all of existence. So, in spite of all that, in spite of the divine creative mind in and behind all creation, there are set of laws, we call it set of characteristics that everything is created under. You know, God is divine, but he's perfect, and there's certain characteristics that governs when he creates, that governs the laws, certain laws that governs his creation. And I like this. It said, these laws are so much part of life that they are never questioned. They are undeviating and consistent, but there would be no such laws if there were no creative, intelligent power manifesting itself through the universe. These principles of creation, the characteristics of the creative power itself, are as follows. So these are principles of creation. These are characteristics that when God created us, comes with us. These are characteristics of the creative power of God. These are things that, and we're going to recognize them. And he said these are undeviating. So that means it, it's not going to go against this. These are things when we come to this earth, not just us, all his creation. It's like these are just like when you talk about probably the Ten Commandments, these are laws of creation that God doesn't go against, and we shouldn't either, you know. So, and we should recognize them because a lot of times we pray, we're asking for these things that's already come with us. He already given these things to us, you know, and we pray for them all the time. These are things that God gives us when He sent us to this earth when we were created. And He said, number one of these characteristics is the nature of creative power is growth. And everything in God's creation must grow. Everything living always grows. And if you notice, growth is a universal characteristics and undeviating principle of existence. And and grass, everything grows. We do not stay the same. But only thing we know right now, the only thing we're not growing is spirituality. That's what one of the reasons for Christ and these letters. Spiritually, we're not growing, but everything God creates must grow. We grow, we start from a baby, we're here. Another
Mm-hmm.
characteristic is nutrition and
Mm-hmm.
nourishment. That's the characteristics that come with us when we come into this
Mm-hmm.
earth. Is
Mm-hmm.
always going to provide for us.
Mm-hmm.
Always going
Amen.
to provide for us. Because when the baby born, eventually, not just baby, every animal, milk is readily available.
Mm-hmm.
Readily available. He always provide for us. Always. Another one is healing. Healing comes naturally with us. It says healing is a natural characteristic of existence and can be said to be a natural perfecting process which takes place to ensure individual comfort, but none can explain what prompts the activity of healing. We all know, but our body is healing itself more than when we sleep, our body heals itself. When we get a cut, if you go on YouTube and show you how when you get a cut, all the cells that's running to that cut to stop you from bleeding. When you overexert yourself, your heart tends to speed up and sometimes it will slow down, depends on your emotion. This body's made to heal itself. Anything anything that comes in your body, that's why when people get like our knee replacements or stuff like that, or different kidney. If your body doesn't recognize it, they have to give them those medication. So to stop your body from attacking that foreign thing. Anything foreign, your body attacks it. Another one is protection. Protection is a characteristics that comes with us when we came on this earth. He talks about our eyebrows, or for the birds, their feathers, for us, our skin, our nails are protection, that kind of protection. Those are characteristics. So when he's creating us, he create us with protection. Fulfillment of need. Fulfillment of need, and we see all the time. She says these physical luxuries added the basic physical design were clearly the product of an intelligent, which intended creation to be comfortable and happy, free of the stress which would have been experienced by man and beast if these luxury items had not given them. Okay. Let me see another one. That was number 5. Number 5. It was at this point, understanding of the nature of the creative power that I came into the full consciousness of the love directing the works of the universal, intelligent, creative power. He said, as I pondered this love, I realized that the mother in creation nourishes, protects, fulfills the needs, and tries to promote healing of offspring. This is the activity of love. The activity of love. Number 6, the innate characteristics of the loving, intelligent, creative power, which has given creation its individual form and being, is work. It works for us it works for us in us and through us. Its work is always prompted by love. This cosmic revelation filled me with joy and astonishment. What a wonderful world we lived in. It was the culminating point in my enlightenment and my overall view of the truth concerning the source of all being. I had already seen the reality of the physical bodies composed of various communities of identical, infinitely tiny entities working in a spirit of cooperation and harmony to produce the various components of the body, flesh, bone, blood, to eyes and hair. The only difference between these communities lay in the type of work. The only difference between these communities lay in the type of work demanded by their common goals. Surely the divine impulse behind all this intelligent, purposeful activity in the body was both the inspiration and foundation of man's own conduct, which people worked in unison to produce a planned objective. They drew intelligence and purpose from the creative power, yet how very different was man's behavior when engaged in earthly construction or any other communal project, for it was inevitably characterized by arguments and dissensions. So it's just saying, ourselves and the everything work together. You see, everything worked together within us to bring forth the creation, the cells, and works together in harmony. And it says how different is man's behavior when we come together for a project, ego comes in, ego and arguments and dissension. So we have to work on that. I was brought to a realization of the infinite power of the intelligent creativity. Every activity within creation maintain order, cooperation, harmony, daily productivity, unequaled by man anywhere at any time. So I know we can't even compare to that intelligent great creativity. Survival, another one characteristics when we come with survival. He says survival was a natural characteristics of the creative power. In every case, the most wonderful provision had been made for all living things to grow, be healed of illness and injury, nourished in order to keep the body healthy and to produce its own kind in order to ensure survival on this earth. This was the only reality mankind could be absolutely sure of, and its activity was consistent year in and year out. The sun, the moon, the stars all remained in their places for millennia, and I was recognized that all possessed their own paths of movement. The phenomena was all part of the grand scheme for survival in creation. If this was so, how could there not be survival of the eternal flame of loving, intelligent, creative power hidden within the created entities of every kind in the universe? Therefore, this world was but a shadow and image of the hidden worlds of loving, intelligent, creative power beyond this dimension. The reality of this the reality of the entirety of creation lay beyond the visible world. So the reality of the entirety of creation lay beyond this visible world. Number 8, everything has rhythm. I like this rhythm. Everything was subject to seasons. And that's when the Bible said for everything there's a season. This is what it's talking about. Everything has rhythm. If there's a time for everything. Everything was subject to seasons, which gave a blossoming and a burgeoning of life, a growing season coming up to the ripening and harvest, and the production of seeds, which ensured the survival of plant and life. Then there was the gradual dying away and rest period of winter, but nothing created and living was allowed to become extinct. The sun and moon express these characteristics within the universe. This rhythm could even be seen in the females of living things. Therefore, everything in creation at its due time for appearance and harvest, it followed that man himself was subject to tides of growth and success and tides of dormancy. So even man, even mankind, it's a time for everything. Sometimes you're prosperous, times you're dormant, sometimes you're struggling, sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're sad. It's not always the devil, it's just a part of life. It's just a part of life. And I love this one. This was my favorite one. Law and order. The characteristics of creation. The inherent characteristics of loving, intelligent, creative power was law and order. The undeviating order and reliability apparent in creation even govern the tiny entities, cells within the body were astonished and far transcend any human endeavor. Therefore, the entire universe was operating under a system of perfect law and order. The entire universe operates under a system of perfect law and order. I realized on ever higher and higher levels of spiritual exhalation that the creative power exhibited intelligent purposefulness and loving concern for all things. I realized that life was not something nebulous or amorphous. And nebulous means cloud and vague. Amorphous means without a clearly defined shape or form. So life was not something nebulous or amorphous, but an intelligent, loving, creative power which I could actually feel within myself as a tremendously heightened state of being. Perception, radiance, ecstasy, joy, and love. I knew myself to be one with it, filled with it, and I was one with everything around me and one with the sky and stars. And most wonderful and glorious of all, the very nature and function of this Father creative power was to work in order to create joy, beauty, and comfort, to ensure mankind's well-being, to work within mankind to provide interior joy, health, and comfort, and to work through mankind, inspiring him with new realization and understanding. Wonderful vistas of glorious creativity came to mind. Once we became truly at one, that means purified channels and instruments of the intelligent creative power, we could gradually ascend in consciousness until we truly expressed through our minds and arts the very nature of the universal creative mind. Then life on earth would indeed become a state of heaven at all times, and we would enter into a state of eternal life. So this is what law and order is. And it says the goal of man is once we became truly at one, purified channels and instrument of the intelligent creative power. That's the goal of man. What does that mean? Purified channels and instrument of the intelligent creative power. Instruments of the intelligent creative power and purified channels. And then we could gradually ascend in consciousness until we truly express through our minds and hearts the very nature of the universal creative power. That's the goal of man, for that we become channels for our God, for our Creator on earth. But you know, you put purified channels. That the way we're at, the way we think right now, we're not purified channels. We have to, that's the goal for man. That's what law and order covers. That's the goal. That's our goal, to become purified channels for our Creator. And then we could gradually ascend in consciousness until we truly express through our minds and arts the very nature of the universal creative power. So gradually ascending consciousness means knowing who we are, knowing, recognizing that universal creative power. Recognize that we too have an aspect of that divine creative power in us. And he says, then life on earth would indeed become a state of heaven at all times, and we would enter in a state of eternal life. This must surely be the true goal behind creation, I thought. That's the true goal behind creation. And it came to me with a surge of elation and loving joy that this was the purpose for which man had been evolved and developed. But even at this present time, although mankind was so very imperfect in its behavior, absolutely nothing was impossible to him in the future. Oh my gosh, do we know that? Do we understand that? It came to me, but even at the present time, although mankind was so very imperfect in its behavior, absolutely nothing was impossible to him in the future. Since, despite his wrongdoing, he was one with the creative power, and the creative power was within him, giving him life, limb, and everything else he needed. I don't think we can really understand it. All of this realization lifted me to the heights of rapture, elation, and sublime ecstasy, so that I was scarcely able to bear it. I felt my body must dissolve with the expansion of power within me. I was irradiated with light and could see it all around me, illuminating the desert scene. Wow, 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 wow. He said, all of this realization, when he realized that because of man imperfectness, nothing was impossible for them in the future, despite our wrongdoings. And that the creative power and the creative, he was one with the creative power, and the creative power was within him. That we were one with our creator, and the creative power is in us. So that creative power is what we call God, giving him life. That's what gives us life, limb, and everything else he needs. That's what the realization, that's what the enlightenment Christ got when he was in the desert. That's what he tried to teach us. Teach not us, but teach when he came off the desert. That's why he's so happy to go back and tell the good news. All of this realization lifted me to the heights of rapture. Look at that word rapture again. Elation and sublime ecstasy, so that I was scarcely able to bear it. I felt my body must dissolve with the expansion of power within me. I was irradiated with light and could see it all around me, illuminating the desert scene. Oh my gosh, just picture that. It was filled with light that the desert light up. That's what happened to Christ. His body light up the desert. Remember, we're not solid. Energy, frequency. We are not solid. Mm-mm-mm. My heart sang in praises. Oh, wonderful and beautiful was the loving creative power which worked in, through, and for us increasingly. Say that again. My heart sang in praises. Oh, wonderful and beautiful was the loving creative power which worked in, through, and for us unceasingly. What a miracle was creation! I cried out aloud. You are the source of all beings, both creator and also manifested within and through the created. Oh, he's telling us, he's saying what his praises are. He was praising the creator. You are the source of all being, both creator and also manifested within the within and through the created. There is nothing in the entire universe which is apart or separate from the limitless, eternal infinity. Divine life, the infinity of divine life, creative power consciousness that you are. How then is it possible that mankind is so sinful? And why do people suffer disease, misery, and poverty? Tell me, oh loving Father, creative power, because I have been heavily burdened with the pain of their miserable lives. Then I was shown the reality of the earthly condition of all things. I felt immense excitement because at last I would be able to understand how it was that such a loving, divine creative power could allow its creation to endure such misery. I was shown that every living thing in creation should be radiantly healthy, cared for, nourished, protected, healed,
Mm-hmm.
maintained in peace and plenty, prospered within an orderly society of being, extending only love to each other. That's how we should be, but that's not how we are.
Mm-hmm. It's not all we are at all.
That's not how we are.
Yes, sir.
That's how the creative power is
Want that to
showing
be.
how we should be.
Mm-hmm. But we don't want that. You're so selfish.
Yeah. However, at the moment of creation, two basic impulses came into being, ensuring that individuality, and it was these which controlled mankind consciousness. These impulses were explained to me in detail, but this knowledge is reserved for a future letter when you will be better able to understand it. I was shown the following vivid vision. So he said he was shown something that's not going to be revealed right now. So as we go ahead reading these letters, we'll understand what happened, why man, there's two basic impulses that came into being. So when mankind had controlled mankind consciousness, that's why we're so diseased. That's why we're not living in the way God created us to live. He said, I was shown the following vivid vision. First of all, I saw a newborn babe as light, a life form of creative power. As the baby grew into childhood, then manhood, I saw the pure light of creative power gradually dimmed and then obscured altogether in him by a dense wrapping of chains and thongs. I questioned the meaning of this vision, and there came to my mind a clear understanding which may be expressed in the following words. From birth to death, people believe and insist that their five senses of sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste correctly predicate the reality of themselves and the universe around them. Therefore, because they draw their mind power directly from divine creative power, it is done to them according to their beliefs. I hope we understand this. I've been saying it all night, well, maybe a couple months. Therefore, because they draw their mind directly, therefore, because they draw their mind power from the divine creative power. So let me say that in earthly, because we get our mind from God, because we get our mind from God, it's whatever we think, whatever we believe, come upon us. Whatever you believe, come upon us because you are creating your reality.
Yeah,
You're
your mind is
creating
so
your
strong,
situation.
so powerful.
Yeah, because your mind is powerful. You
Yes.
get your mind directly from God.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're here listening and you're thinking you're going through something and you're thinking it's happening to you because of, not saying those things don't exist, but it's showing us that if we get our 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 mind from that divine creative power from our creator, they tell you no weapons from us against us shall prosper. So we shouldn't dwell on what who is doing to us. Don't dwell on what who's doing to us. Let's think on the things that we want for ourselves, the good things. Use our mind to create it, but we know how this mind works. We're full of fear, division, hate, you know. Think of the fruits of the spirit, love, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Think of that. Because whatever you believe, it is done to you. We're creating the situation that we find ourselves in. You saying something, sis?
That's so true.
Oh, sorry, sorry. Okay. All right. Each song represents a person's habitual thoughts, responses to people and events, prejudice, hates, animosities, anxieties, sorrows, all of which bind him down and shut out the light from his inner vision drawn from the creative power. So these things create that barrier between us and our creator. Animosities, anxieties, prejudice, hate. Remember these things. Thus, he enters into darkness, but he does not know it. He believes he is growing up and becoming mature in the ways of the world, which will enable him to forge ahead and make good, become successful, the aim of most people on earth. In fact, the more mature he becomes and versed in worldly ways, the more densely do his chains and his tongues imprison him within the grip of, of the twin impulses of bonding and rejection. All right. This is what they're saying. Growing up and you're becoming mature in the world and you're forging ahead and you're going to be successful. That's the aim of most of us on the earth. Get the good job and work, and we're going to get the car and the house. So it says the more we're versed in world, that's okay. That's not a bad thing. But we have to have a balance. We have to have a balance. We can't be all for the career. We have to have a spiritual aspect to it. Because if you're not, you're just for the world, for the world, for the world. You're just creating a barrier between you and your creator. He's not gonna leave, he's always there, but then you have to come back and you have to pull away that and try and find him again. Let him direct your path. Let him take the wheel, you know? We're in the world, but we're not of the world, he says. So it's not bad to want a career and all that, but just we have to have a balance. There has to be a balance. Oh, and it says, just to see, I see this word too, bonding and rejection. It's the twin impulses of bonding and rejection. It's the same thing as electromagnetism. Bonding in means you bond to something, and rejection is certain. We constantly do this unaware of it in our daily lives. We attract certain things and we reject certain things. So when you're in this place of seeking the world, and when your spirituality, the godly aspect of you come and want to do, you don't have any time, so you keep rejecting it, and you're just bonding to the things. Um, you're just bonding to the things that's leading you to that career, that earthly career that you want. and you're rejecting the spirituality. Oh, let's pray, let's meditate, let's, you know, stop and smell the perfume, spend some time with your children, spend some time, talking and blessing somebody. You're just rejecting that because your mind is on a goal. And it's not just that. We have to have a balance, so that bonding and rejection. Because remember earlier we said we're not just we're seeing ourselves in the physical, we're seeing ourselves as solid, we're impulses, we have we have energy, we have frequencies. We're not solid beings. It's just because of the consciousness level why we see ourselves solid. And it says depends on the consciousness inside, depends on what your outer appearance is. And when he says consciousness, he's talking about the mind, the mind, the mind. I know that word is going around a lot today. Some people, I know in politics, they're calling it woke and woke and woke. But the goal, as it says earlier, the goal for us here on earth is to become a channel for our divine creator. And that's what Christ saw in the desert, that in spite of our wicked ways, he said, in spite of our wicked ways, the creative power is within us. That creative power is within us. Furthermore, each chain is forged out of selfish, deceitful desires. So it's talking about the chain of bonding and rejection. Let me tell you. In fact, the more mature he becomes and versed in worldly ways, the more densely does his chains and thongs imprison him within the grip of the twin impulses of bonding and rejection. So these chains, because what you're so in the world, so worldly. Furthermore, each chain is forged out of selfish and deceitful desires, greed, aggression, violence, and rape. These chains hang heavy around him and burden the psyche, which is the creative consciousness power within him. So that's how you create that dense barrier between that divine creative power. By these chains, you burden the psyche, you burden your thought, burden it down. Chain and thong will bind him tighter with ever passing year until he realizes what he's doing to himself and sincerely repents. Each thong and chain repents each thong and chain and makes due restitution to others whom he has harmed. Whom he has harmed. So we have to mindful the place we find ourselves. Selfish, deceitful, greed, aggressive, violent, rape. Mm. Burdens the psyche, which is the creative consciousness power deep within him. Mm. Ever passing here, chains and thong will burden every until he realizes what he is doing to himself and sincerely repents each thong and change makes due restitution to others whom he has harmed. With this vision, I learned a most valuable aspect of existence. Man himself is born with a potential to make a beautiful life for himself. But he himself, by indulging his selfish desire, And hatred creates a prison of misery for himself, from which there was no escape until such times as he realizes the truth of existence. Mm, we have to be careful. All the problems of harsh existence lay within the thought process of man himself. Only people's consciousness forms their thoughts, their words, their feelings, actions created a dense barrier between their consciousness and the universal creative consciousness, inter- interpenetrating the universe in every leaf, tree, insect, bird, and human being. What could create a barrier between us and our Creator? Our consciousness forms. What our consciousness forms? Our thoughts, our words, our feelings, our actions. Those create a barrier between us and this is not, we're not talking about outside of us, within us. I was also shown the laws of existence controlling the human ability to create new circumstances and environment, relationships, achievements or failure, prosperity or poverty. Whatever man profoundly believes himself to be, good or bad, that will he become. Whatever man fears others will do to him, so will they do. Whatever man hopes that others will do to him, whatever man hopes that others will do to him, he must first do to them. He is often creating a consciousness pattern which will return to bless him to the extent he has blessed others. Whatever disease man dreads, so will he become prey to it. He will have created a consciousness pattern of the very thing he least wants experience. Whatever is sent forth from man's mind and heart returns to him in due course, in some form or another. But remember that like always breed likes. Strongly emotional thoughts are consciousness seed planted within a man's own orbit of consciousness. These will grow, bearing a like harvest of reaping. These are the fruits of free will. There is no way that man may escape what he thinks, says, or does. Let me say that again. There is no way that man escape what he thinks, says, or does, for he is born of the divine creative consciousness, power, and is likewise creative in his imagining. Those who long for good for themselves must first give to others. All this, all this is ex- exercising our free will. And God's not gonna go against that. What we think, what we say, or what we do, that's exercising our free will. And we take our mind power from that. We draw our mind power from that divine creative power, from our creator. So whatever we think, say, or does, we are creating it. We are creating it. So renew your mind. Renew your mind. Watch what we say, watch what we do. I think the mind is the hardest to keep under control because we grew up in, I was just saying, Father, we grew up in a world where we fear so many things, where we were deceived by so many things, and our mind tend to go places. Um,
Yeah,
to,
all the time. Yeah, so
yeah,
true.
to things that we don't really want to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and our mind, when we see the sickness, especially if you work in healthcare. You remember, I don't know if you remember in COVID, when you take care of a COVID patient, you used to think by the time you go home, you think you have COVID.
That's true,
Because,
man.
our
True,
mind is
true.
so powerful. And,
Mm-hmm.
I keep praying, Father, help me. Because, sometimes you see somebody with some sickness, sometimes somebody tell you their knee hurts and your knee start hurting,
That's so
because
true.
your mind. I'm like, God, we're so imperfect. And we could pray for God to give us the strength. We could put our minds and our thoughts under subjection, that it may not full with fear, but it may full of the godly things and goodly things that we want for ourselves. Okay. Those who long for good for themselves must first give it to others. Let
Mm.
their very existence be a blessing to others. When such people are in harmony with all others, they are then perfectly attuned to the universal creative consciousness power, and they are brought into the flow of the Father nature, which is growth, protection, nourishment, physical, mental, spiritual healing, fulfillment of need within a system of law and order. How can I describe for you my inner glow, my transcendence, brightness, and brilliance for joy, and powerful feeling of love, which possessed and inflated my entire being with their intensity? Until I cried out with the pressure within my mind and heart. It was so powerful, it seemed it would entirely dissolve my bodily form. As I received all this supreme, sublime understanding of the reality, our source of being and true nature of creation itself and of mankind, I was uplifted in spirit and my body became light as air. At that time, when I was thus elevated within the divine creative power itself, I was indeed almost a divine person myself, experiencing a high degree of the nature of the Father creative power within me and feeling its own drive and care and concern for all humanity. Therefore, I could later say with truth, only I know and have seen the Father. In that moment, how I yearned to teach, heal, comfort, uplift, feed, take away the people's pain and misery. I longed to release them from their fear of a mythical, avenging God. Mm. Even to this day, we as a church have this fear, the avenging God. I long to release them from their fear of a mythical, avenging God. When I returned to tell them the truth, how I could emphasize the reality of the Father creative power, perfect love, perfect love. Supply, this is who our Father is. This is just who I can feel my Father is. Perfect love.
Mm-hmm.
Supplying their every need. All they had to do was ask, seek, knock, and all their needs of whatever kind would be bestowed upon them. How joyously I would tell them the good news. How joyously I would tell them the good news that redemption from suffering lay within their grasp if they only took the necessary steps to cleanse their minds and hearts of the twin impulses of manifested being. Oh my gosh. Oh, joyously I would tell them the good news that redemption from suffering live within their grasp. The grasp, if they only could took the necessary step to cleanse their minds and hearts of the twin impulses of manifested being. This should be simple enough, I thought. This should be simple enough, I thought. Only only needed understanding and self-control. That's what Christ thinks this was going to be easy. I have descended towards your vibration to refer back to this is Christ talking. So I have descended towards your vibration to refer back to my actual state of mind during the time I was in the desert. It will help your own understanding immeasurably if you try to enter my state of consciousness at that time. So many things, such as my works of healing, walking on water, will become clear to you. They will be seen to be unnatural consequences of my new understanding of the Father creative power. If you read the Gospels of Matthew and Mark, their records will have new meaning to you. To return to my final hours of enlightenment, there I was in the desert, possessing the clear understanding that man himself, through no fault of his own, creates the barrier to attunement to the Father creative power. And now I was longing to hurry back and teach, heal, comfort, dry the tears of those I so greatly pitied. Yet I was reluctant to leave this hallowed place where I had been so illumined and transformed in the spirit. On the other hand, what a wonderful future lay ahead of for me. I would walk through all the cities, towns, villages, and tell everyone I met the good news. The kingdom of God, heaven, that place where all sickness disappeared and every need was supplied, was within them. Because I knew that the Father and I were one, and that my mind had been cleansed of the old thoughts and ideas. I would direct healing at their illness and disease. I would teach them how to relieve their poverty. And the good news, let me just say the good news one more time. The good news. You heard the good news, Sister Bev? Sister Bev?
Yes, I'm here with you. I'm
Oh, you're
here. Yeah.
sleeping?
No, man, I'm sleeping. I'm listening to you reading.
Oh, you hear the
No,
good
man.
news?
I hear the good news.
The good news.
Yes.
The kingdom of heaven,
Mm.
the kingdom of heaven, that place where all sickness disappeared and every need
Mm-hmm.
was supplied was
Yes.
within them.
Yes. It's in you. It's in
Yes,
you.
that's the
Mm-hmm.
good news.
Yes. I put my phone on something on mute because I don't want to distract. I know
Oh, I
you
thought
know
you
you're
fell
yeah.
asleep.
Eh?
I thought you were asleep.
No, man,
You
because
fell.
you're recording. I don't want to distract you. That's why I put it on somewhere.
Ah. So when the Father consciousness within me began to dim and I gradually returned to human consciousness, I became aware of gnawing hunger. So this is after the Father consciousness began to dim. He was in such a heightened place with
Yeah.
God. He didn't even feel hunger. And I
Mm-hmm.
gradually to return to my human consciousness, I became aware of a gnawing hunger and also a return of my human conditioning and thoughts. My reactions to my 6 weeks experience began to change. My usual human awareness of me and my desires took over my thoughts. Why the most amazing, completely unexpected thing has happened to me? I exalted, I have been given knowledge beyond any yet to any other man. I was jubilant with the realization that at last my doubt and rebelliousness against the avenging God of the traditional Orthodox Jews was vindicated. I had been right after all.
Mm-hmm.
Who had ever suspected the human mind could be so highly creative? I didn't know until I started reading this letter. I didn't know. I mean, I would say so. I started my channel. I found a book about thoughts. I didn't. Now I understand what they were saying about your thoughts.
Very
He
powerful.
said, "Oh, powerful sis! I didn't know that our mind
Mm-hmm.
is so creative that we're creating
Mm-hmm.
the situation we find ourselves in."
Mm-hmm.
Who had ever suspected the human mind could be so highly creative that a strongly held thought or desire would actually manifest itself in the visible realm?
Mm-hmm.
He said, I realized that Moses must have known something of this because he had accomplished some strange things when the Israelites were in dire need.
Mm-hmm.
He became a leader and changed the course of the Israelites previously enslaved in Egypt. I could return now and free my people from the rigid control of their own teachers. My
Mm-hmm.
hunger pains now became intense. It occurred to me that I could turn stones into bread to satisfy my longing for food because I remembered that the Father creative power worked through my mind, and therefore everything in the universe would be subject to my command. And yeah, that we have to believe. The Father creative power works through our minds, and everything in the universe is subject to our command. That's why we don't need to be scared and to be scared of devil and all that stuff. Yeah, they exist, but they too have to be subjected to the creator. Be subjected to the creator. It came to me strongly that the Father creative consciousness was perfect protection, nourishment, fulfillment of need. And so the hunger would be taken care of if I asked the Father for relief. I realized that if the little I, the human me, in my need used the creative power for selfish reasons, I would be erecting a barrier between the Father creative consciousness and myself, and everything I just learned might well be taken away from me. This frightened me, and swiftly I asked the Father creative power for new strength to carry me back to habitations and Nazareth again. I also asked for relief of hunger in the form that would be right for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is so eye-opening when I read it the first time. So this is Christ coming from the desert, coming out of the desert, and where he sees all things, and where he come to the knowledge and the power that he has, and that not just him, that we has as children of the Most High God. And here he was hungry, and he wanted he no he knows that he could have um
I can for
called
the
for
angel.
bread. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
you see what he says? He didn't want to use this not because you have the power to do something,
Mm-hmm. You gotta
you
do it.
know, you do it because
Mm-hmm.
that's just for him to use for his own selfishness, even
Yes.
though he was hungry, you know, even though he was hungry. So he said, no, he doesn't want to create that because when we do selfish things, it creates a barrier
Mm-hmm.
between us and our Father.
Yes.
You
Mm-hmm.
see what he's saying, sis? Yeah, so it
Yes.
creates a barrier. So what he does, he prayed to God. He
Yes.
said, Father, see what he said? He said, swiftly, the frightened me, and swiftly I asked the Father, created power for new strength to carry me back to Nazareth again. And I
Mm-hmm.
also asked for relief. You know what we praise? Also asked for relief of hunger in the form that would be right for me. He said immediately the hunger pangs subsided, and I felt a surge of energy flow through my entire body. Mm. Thus, I proved that all I had seen, heard, and understand was reality, and not
Mm-hmm.
some vain imagining born of my time in the desert fasting alone. My
Mm-mm.
new energy enabled me to make haste over the rough tracks on my way out of the desert. On the way, I met a well-dressed man of sweet and pleasing countenance. He greeted me warmly, expressing concern on seeing my rough, unkempt appearance and loss of condition.
Mm.
Gladly, he sat me down on a rock and shared his excellent meat and bread with me. And you see
Wow.
how God provide.
Provide, yes.
Look how God provide.
Yes,
We just
provide.
pray. Yeah. I wondered why he was in such a desolate place and where he had come from. In
Mm.
response to my questioning, he only smiled and seemed not the least surprised when I said I had been in the desert for so many days I had lost count of time. I
Mm-hmm.
explained how I was enlightened as to the true nature of the creator of the world and
Mm.
shown the natural laws of existence. He only smiled and nodded. I am going back to my people to teach them everything I have learned, I said joyously. Why I will be able to heal them and bring them release from every sickness and trouble. The stranger replied sadly, it will take many millennia.
Mm. It, yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes.
Yes,
Took a long time for them to learn.
a long time for us to
Yes.
learn, a long time. I was about to rebuke his lack of faith when I realized he was gone. I knew then that a divine messenger had come to succor. Is that
Mm-hmm.
succor? He had come to succor with good bread and meat and
Mm-hmm.
compassionately give me warning that I might not find my mission so simple despite my enthusiasm. I was deflated by his word of warning. My enthusiasm waned. The way to the first village on my road seemed endless. Our change in human thought process, a change of mood. It came to me that I could further prove the truth of all I had been shown by jumping over the edge of a precipice, which would greatly shorten my journey. As I was about to do this, it came to me forcibly that I was trying to prove my time of enlightenment was real. And you see, this is another time mentioned in the Bible, too, sis. Because you see what he said? He said he could have jumped. He went to the edge of the precipice to
Mm-hmm.
jump over the precipice because he knows that he would be okay
Mm-hmm.
because he was just shown the power of God that's inside him. But
Yes.
you remember what the Bible said happened here?
Mm-mm.
That the devil brought him to the eye of the mountain and said,
Yes, yes. I say
yeah,
jump off and give all as deep say yes.
mm-hmm,
And then say man not live by bread alone, but by perfect.
exactly.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mighty God.
Yeah, yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, yeah, yeah. And he's saying what really happened. He was so deflated by what the man told him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So not that he was committing suicide, he just wanted his journey shorter
Yes.
to go home because he was so deflated because the man said it's gonna take a millionaire for him to and and then it's come to him like, listen, you're trying to prove that what you just saw in the desert was what was true. So, that thought eventually he got rid of that thought. And he said, if I required such proof, then I was in a state of doubt and I would probably kill myself. Besides, I'd been shown that in every eventuality, I could lift my thoughts up to the Father creative consciousness and ask for a solution to every problem. How quickly I forgot the truth. So I prayed passionately, asking for forgiveness for being weak enough to indulge my own fantasies and seeking my own way of doing things.
Yeah.
And it says we do this so often.
Often.
Oh my gosh,
As
sis,
we
we do
pray, we
this
still out.
so
Mm-hmm.
often.
Still await.
Oh
You
my
want to fix
God.
things to yourself. I know
We
we can't
still
fix it.
do. And even though we
Mm-hmm.
know that we can, we do this so often, and we have to keep realizing when we to give it to God. We have to like pray about it. And when we do that, we need to ask for forgiveness.
Yes, that's
You
so
know?
true.
Yeah, we need to ask for forgiveness because we have ignored the power of God that lives within us and doing it our own way. And we
Amen.
never get it right.
Yes.
Mm. Again, the answer came in renewed strength and a great sureness of foot as I scrambled over the rough ground. I found too that I was covering long distance so quickly that it seemed that I had stepped outside normal time reckoning. And I was in a lighter dimension where human experience was lifted above its heavy thraldom of exhausting expenditure of energy. Walking so easy, it was now invigorating. I exulted in the fact that I had found the key to more abundant life. A while later, feeling so much at ease, many mind began to wander, and I thought about my meeting with the stranger and the kindness he had shown me. But I also remembered his warning again. My old nature reasserted itself, and I felt deeply rebellious and that he should presume to tell me how my work should go. I decided he knew nothing about my future and set his warning aside. You see how even in Christ that flesh was still, he was still wrestling with that flesh? Why I thought with my knowledge I could accomplish things no man has ever done before. Instead of struggling in a difficult life, I could begin to accumulate wealth easily, attract followers wherever I went, and share my knowledge with them to make their lives easier also. I could take away all pain and suffering. As I contemplated the many places I would visit so easily, I felt myself skimming the surface of the ground and rising until I reached the highest peak of a steep mountain overlooking the countryside below. There it was, all laid out before me. I felt my previous enthusiasm return. Why, it would be so simple to round up the people and share all my knowledge with them. I would become powerful, even famous as the man who rescued mankind from all their sickness and troubles. I would gain their admiration and respect and would no longer be remembered as an idle, worthless fellow. With a tremendous shock, all I had been taught so recently, but a few hours ago, returned to mind with great force and clarity. Had I not been taught that the only way I could ever prosper was to abandon my self will and turn to the Father for assistance in everything I undertook? Then I remember that creation and its own special purpose to fulfill the individualizing process and created the pull and push to give and take to human behavior. Although these human characteristics cause people great anguish in their lives, what is not the anguish which forced them? No, oh, no. Although these human characteristics cause people great anguish in their lives, was it not the anguish which forced them to seek better ways to live in order to find true happiness? I realize that the ills of mankind and their place in the human scheme, I, I realize that the ills of mankind and their places in the human scheme of existence. What, oh, what am I reading? I realize that the ills of mankind and their place in the human scheme of existence. You know, my thing going. Was it right for me to bring privileged information to people in order to nullify the effects of the individualizing process? I realized I'd been thinking from the central part of my individuality, the ego. And it was the ego drive which built barriers between mankind and the Father creative consciousness. Therefore, my central point of human desiring could have been conquered if I was to live in perfect harmony with my Father, as many as was my sincere intention. And so I continued on my way, pondering what might lie ahead and how I might best overcome the impulses governing my human moodhood in order to remain in the flow of the Father consciousness from which I would draw inspiration, guidance, answers, and problems, my daily nourishment, daily health, daily protection. In fact, I realized that whilst I remain within this daily flow of the Father consciousness, no harm could ever come near me, and my every need would met, and more importantly, the Father consciousness working through me would do whatever was required for people in dire need of healing. Oh, yes, Lord, and comfort. At all times, oh, we just see this just do something to my spirit. You don't have to do much. You don't have to do much. Then stay in the Father creative consciousness. Don't put any barriers, between us and our creator. Don't put and we put barriers. As we see here, the ego, self. Oh, we want to do this and people going to do this and do this. Those are the things that create a barrier between us and a Father. If we stay in the flow of the Father divine creative consciousness, you think that the Father creative consciousness is what we call God, the creator. If we stay in the flow of that, everything everything. Oh, hallelujah. Everything will just flow to us. Whatever we need, He already know. Protection, He already know. We don't even have to ask for it, you know. And in order to stay in that, we have to not create barriers. Don't think of ourselves of more than we are. Don't let that ego love your brothers. Don't hate. The things that are in this world that comes naturally to us, you know. Mm. At all times, I must overcome my rebelliousness against the harsh realities of existence and listen to the inner voice and conform to the higher will of the Father. This higher will was perfect love. Anything you're thinking, anything you're doing, and if it doesn't line up with perfect love, we're not in the higher will of our Father. Directed entirely at promoting my highest good. Start over. At all time, I must overcome my rebelliousness against the harsh realities of existence and listen to the inner voice and conform to the higher will of the Father. This higher will was perfect love, directly, entirely at promoting my highest good. It would be extremely foolish, I realized, to continue in the path of self-will, which had dictated my behavior to that time. And so many of us can say that self-will has dictated our behavior to this point. Like this night, if you're listening to this word, or whenever this word reaches you, we depend on our Father's creative power. Little will we know when we do things of our own self, or we create a barrier between us and them, us and him, and that power. And he's not even man, but whatever him. But because it's just it's a constant flow. It's a constant flow. It's constantly that voice within us. So we can hear that voice within us, constantly leading us, constantly guiding us, protecting us, directing us. We can't hear because we're that twin impulses in us, bonding and rejection, working overtime. That ego is working overtime. It was then that I was inspired to speak in parables to the people. So this inspired him to speak in parables to people. Those who were ready to receive the knowledge would understand and make good use of it. Oh. Mm. But as it turned out, even my disciples would not rid themselves sufficiently of Jewish doctrine to enable them to understand either the principle of consciousness or the activity of the divine creative power within creation. Oh, wow. I didn't know this. Yeah, he mentioned this earlier, but it says, he begins to speak in parables. So the disciples didn't even understand what he was saying. So we're getting understanding of Christ and the divine creative power. But if you're listening to this channel tonight, if you're listening to this channel, if you're watching at a later date, you're getting a deeper understanding than even the disciples did of the divine creative power. Isn't that something?
Mm-hmm.
The disciples, they couldn't understand this. And I'm not gonna judge. They're just living a different era where they couldn't understand all this. I mean, not everybody here this is gonna understand it. So he said, but as it turned out, even my disciples could not rid themselves sufficiently of the Jewish doctrine to enable them to understand either the principle of consciousness or the activity of the divine creative power within creation. Until this time, it has remained a mystery to all except the spiritually enlightened. It's remained a mystery to all except the spiritually enlightened. And who are the spiritually enlightened? Buddha. You have a lot of spiritual enlightened people we wouldn't even know. Buddha. Some people in the Indian religion, some Buddhists. I know I read some of Blavatsky, H.B. Blavatsky. There's some enlightened people out there. I don't know about now. Everyone I'm talking about is dead. But I don't know about now. There's some enlightened people out there. This mystery. This mystery. This mystery. This mystery. I think we were reading Amos on the prayer line the other day, and it says the prophets is gonna reveal the secrets to the people. The prophet's gonna reveal the secret to the people. So there's still the secret that not everybody knows. But everybody's gonna know it. So if you listen tonight and you're like deep ministry, these divine creative power, this everybody it doesn't matter how long you take, you're gonna know it. You're gonna know this mystery. You have to, I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. No matter how long it takes, you're gonna understand this mystery, the mystery of the divine creative power working within you, the mystery, the same universal creative power you is a other aspect of it inside of you. That's why you're so powerful. That's why you create. That's why you're able to create every situation you find yourself in. That's a mystery that you're part of the divine creative power. You said just like a candle, you're not the creative power, you're part of it. And if the creative power is God, this talking about the creative power is God. You are that little aspect of God. You have that within you. So you can create the life you want to live, your heaven on earth. But with that power comes responsibility. We have to remember that. We can't be selfish with that power. The mystery, that's the mystery. That your mind, the mystery that your mind is powerful. The mystery, you create everything you live in. The mystery that the creative power is in all its creation. That divine creative power, that perfect love. Okay. Even the spiritual words of enlightenment cannot be immediately fully comprehended by the human mind. Therefore, these letters must be read slowly and accompanied by such meditation and prayer to be properly understood. Remember, unless you can become as a little child, remember, unless you can become as a child, getting rid of useless clutter of beliefs, prejudice, resentment, ambitions, ego drive, with a mind filled with wonder and utmost faith, you will not be able to absorb these pages as you should. To become a little child, you must make an effort to shed all past mental conditioning. If you are mentally, emotionally, physically suffering, it is only because whatever you have been your most sincere beliefs, you have not been helpful to you. They have not promoted your well being. It is time to examine your mindset. Are you happy with it? You can make choices. And as you make them, you can call upon the Father to help you make the changes. And the help will surely be given you, providing you do not doubt. It is time to examine your mindset. Are you happy with it? Are you happy with your mindset? It says you can make your choices, and as you make them, you can call upon the Father to help you make the changes, and the help will surely be given you, providing you do not doubt. Providing you do not doubt. Mm. Providing you do not doubt. I therefore urge you to continue to read and observe these pages. I want to impress on you the strength of your mindset, which is a sum total of all your conscious and subconscious programming. It is essential you should understand that none of this human mindset has its origins in the spiritual dimension. Let me read this. It is essential that you know, that you should understand that none of this human mindset has its origins in the spiritual dimension. It is entirely earthly and probably filled with mythical ideas, prejudice, misconceptions, resentments, buried memories of past hurts, and habitual methods of dealing with the ups and downs of life. Your human mindset, including any religious ideas or beliefs, determine your world, your relationship, experiences, success, failures, happiness, and misery. It is even responsible for your sickness, disease, and accidents. Nothing happens by chance. Everything is woven out of the inner threads of your personal consciousness. Thoughts, expectation, beliefs in life, faith in God. You live in a world of your own making. This is why children raised in the same environment turn out differently. Hmm? Turn out differently. Hmm. Yeah, it is entirely earthly. This is everything. It is essential that you should understand that none of this human mindset has its origins in the spiritual dimension. None. It is entirely earthly and probably filled with mythical ideas, mis- mythical ideas, prejudices, misconceptions, resentments, buried memories of past hurts, and habitual methods of dealing with the ups and downs of life. Your human mindset, including any religious ideas or beliefs, determines your world, your relationship, experiences, success, failures, happiness, and misery. It is even responsible for your sickness, disease, and accidents. Nothing happens by chance. Everything is woven out of the inner threads of your personal consciousness, thoughts, expectation, beliefs in life, faith in God. You live in a world of your own making. This is why children raised in the same environment turn out differently. Each one has its own individual mindset constructed according to the inherent character trait. And there you have your answers. You have three children, and you'd be like, why three of them come out differently? It's the mindset. It's their mindset. If from birth you had no developing mindset, you'd be as unconscious as a statue, devoid of feeling, responses, and thought. Vacantly, you would stare at the world, and whilst there might be a great deal of activity around you, nothing would impinge on your consciousness, since you would be devoid of reaction. Nothing would make you happy or miserable, even if a bomb exploded in your vicinity. Without a mindset, you have no life, no development, no evil, no good. Your type of mindset determines the quality of your life. This is the very truth of existence. This is the very first truth of existence. I want you to realize and understand fully. Your type of mindset determines Your type of mindset determines the quality of your life. This is the verse truth of existence I want you to realize and understand fully. Furthermore, for as long as you live, you carry your mindset with you wherever you go. There is no escaping it. And day after day, it will continue to create for you the type of existence you have experienced in the past. Many people go through their entire lives believing they are unfortunate. They think that other people have been mean, unkind, ugly to them, and have made their lives thoroughly unhappy. They believe that other people quarrel with them and constantly make difficulties whilst they are absolutely innocent of any provocation. On the contrary, other people are not to blame. It is the personal mindset which is attracting them to their negative conditions. Are we gonna believe that? We better believe that. Mm. Remember, it's your mindset. It's your mindset. Many people shy away from the suggestions that they alone are responsible for their troubles. It is more difficult for some people to face up to their inadequacies than it is for those who have the inner strength and self-confidence to look at themselves fairly and squarely. Sincere prayer draws the Father creative consciousness into the mind. Quietly, secretly, it cleanses the human consciousness of all this that the seeker no longer feels comfortable with. It is of necessity a very gradual process of inner cleansing and development. So, if you're listening this, and a lot of us can relate, a lot of us can relate to our mindset, because I do think sometimes somebody's doing something about me, to me, really. I do think somebody's doing something to me, and it's saying it's our mindset. It's our mindset. If you think you're creating all that, people are drawn to your mindset. So, and in the Bible, I always say, renew your mind. Renew your mind. It didn't go as far as saying that it's your mind that's creating the environment that you live in. And it says, sincere prayer draws the Father's creative conscious into the mind quietly, secretly cleanses the human consciousness of all the seeker no longer feels comfortable with. It is necessity, a very gradual process of inner cleansing and development. But we also, in order to pray about it, we have to accept it and know that we need help with our mind, and ask our Father creative power, our Father creative consciousness to come in and cleanse our mind of all these cobwebs that's creating this environment that we find ourselves in. And emotional patterns. Your emotional patterns can be as damaging as your overall welfare. As your mindset together with your emotional patterns are your creative tools. Mm. These creative tools work in your life whether you intend them to or not. It is far more difficult to discover your deep-seated emotional attitudes, either conscious or subconscious, than to recognize your mental conditioning. People can be possessed by a negative emotional pattern and be quite unaware of them since they are covered by the moment-to-moment emotions arising from the daily routine. To discover what your emotional patterns really are, ask yourself questions along the following lines and be totally honest with yourself. So this is an exercise. Um, about how do you feel about life, how do you feel about the people you work with, and you need to write them down. And in a year, write them down. We already went over this. And in a year, you revisit them and see, after reading these letters, and see how you still feel about these people. So this is an exercise. Okay. So remember that prayer and meditation focused entirely on your Creator will bring you new strength, not just prayer
Mm-hmm.
and meditation and
Mm-hmm.
inside, which in return will bring changes to your feelings and environment. When praying, never focus on your problems. Always ask for the right remedy. Let your Creator bring you the right solution, which your human mind is incapable of thinking up. You know what it says? When praying, never focus on your problems. Ask for the right remedy and let your Creator bring you the right solutions, which your mind, human mind, is incapable of thinking of. For instance, never tell your Creative Father how ill you are. Concentrate on the power you are receiving immediately in your condition, although your consciousness may be too densely human to feel it, and give thanks for your swift recovery and believe it. When you give thanks, you are accepting, acknowledging, believing, impressing in your own consciousness the realization that your prayer now lies within the Father love consciousness
Mm-hmm.
and is being processed for visible manifestation in due course at the right time. When in
Mm-hmm.
Palestine, I constantly gave thanks for the work before it was accomplished. Don't wait for the healing or whatever to take place before you start giving thanks. As soon as you pray, start giving thanks. Never pray and then go out of your room and tell people how ill you feel or how terrible the personal or national situation is. If you ask the Father Creator to solve your problems, finances, or poor health, what an insult to the Father Creator to continue to bring up the past negative conditions. You immediately undo the work of the Father is engaged in. If in your mind after prayer, the old conditions have not become past negative conditions, then return. Then, then, then return to prayer until you can dismiss them from your mind and really believe that all is being divinely taken care of right that minute. Return again and again to giving thanks for the beliefs you have asked for. They will surely materialize. Abandon fears. They have availed you nothing. Now turn to the universal Father Creator as the source of your being, conception, growth, development, nutrition, regeneration, healing, fulfillment of your every need, protection, all within a system of spiritual law and order. Realize that all this wonderful work is constructive, purposeful, and orderly. You truly have a mastermind behind you, your family, and living conditions. All you want for is constructive purpose. You truly have a mastermind behind you and your family and living conditions. Trust it. Do not allow your thinking to spoil the divine creative operation. I'm going to say that again. Do not allow your thinking to spoil the divine creative operation. Remember that I, the Christ, only performed my so-called miracles because I realized that the kingdom of God was within me and that I could always rely on my Creator Father to do the work in and through me. What did Christ say? that I, the Christ, only performed my so-called miracles because I realized that the kingdom of God was within me and that I could always rely on my Creator Father to do the work in and through me. Remember that you only have an individual consciousness because you have drawn it from the Creative Father consciousness. Remember, you have an individual consciousness because you have drawn it from the Father creative consciousness, Father creative Father consciousness. So if you're out there, you said, "Oh, I heard on Deep Ministry that I get my consciousness from." You have your consciousness because I get it from my Father creative consciousness. And everything that you get from the Father has power.
Mm-hmm.
Has
Authority
power. And
and
if your
authority.
father's powerful, you are powerful. You hear
Mm-hmm.
people, the Bible says, ye are gods. And it's so sacrilegious, people. You can't even say you are gods. That's exactly what the word is saying. You're not the God, but you have the power to create. You have the power to destroy. You get your consciousness, you get your being from the divine creative power. That's what who you are. Act like it, believe it. That's your mindset. That's why we in such difficulty. Let your mind think of who you are. We pray like we're these poor, look at this and look at that. We pray like we don't have any authority. We pray like we no, you're not gonna go around and use it at will. But know who you are, because if whatever you put in your mind, that's what's coming to you. So whether you want to believe that you are God's or whether you don't want to believe, you're living it. Because if you create an environment that's causing you sickness and disease, you are creating it. Nobody's doing you anything. We're quick to say it's this and it's that. It's you, it's us, it's us. So if you don't want to believe that you're God's, don't believe. But just remember, you're creating the situation. You have a bad marriage, you have a bad job, you have a sick leg. It's you, it's you, it's you. Your consciousness, because that's what you're scared of. That's what you think about. You think people at work is talking about, you're attracting them because of your mindset. You're looking at them and you think they're talking about you, and it's your mindset. We're causing this problem we find ourselves in. We have to take responsibility for that. And it says, when your personal consciousness is fully cleansed of negativity, you will discover that you too have become a purified channel of creative Father consciousness. You will be a joyous source of growth, nutrition, healing, nurturing, protection, fulfillment of need within a system of good organizational law and order to all who come within your orbit. See that? To all who comes within your orbit. You don't even have to do anything. This powerful influence will be extended through your mind, to your families, to your friends, to your neighbors, to your farmlands, and your animals and your crops. Even as electricity passed through your hands will light a Bunsen burner in a laboratory, so will your life force radiations benefit all who come within your radius or influence. So when you walk in God, you don't have to sit there and beg God to bless your husband and your children and your farm and your land and your chickens. It just happens because you're radiating the Father divine consciousness. And that's our ultimate goal, to become purified channels for the Father creative consciousness. There's somewhere in the New Testament said we are his ambassadors. It don't matter where you go, you're gonna walk on your job, you're gonna walk. And how we become that, if you're hearing, I just read, if you're saying deep ministry, how I become that creative channel. for my Father creative consciousness, your mind, your mind. Ask your Father to remove the ego, everything of self, your mindset. You have to cleanse. That's our ultimate goal, to cleanse our mindset from all negativity and hate and discord. So that's so we can become this channel for the Father creative consciousness. And so, you know how I see it, so that there be no hindrance. So when your Father creative conscious just can move freely through you, that when he said, you know, go out there and sit on the sidewalk, don't go to work today, don't do this today, that's becoming a channel for the Father creative consciousness. You know, go out there and talk to Sister John, Brother John, Sister Peg, you know, just a free flow, the flow of God's power through you without hindrance. Oh my gosh, that's our ultimate goal. That's the secret. That's a mystery. Ooh, ooh, ooh. That's a secret. That's the mystery that even the disciples of the Father creative power, that even the disciples couldn't understand. All negativity, all negativity. Rid your mind of it. And it takes a daily, because we've been programmed by this world, and oh, but with God all things are possible. With God all things are possible. And just see how it influence. You don't have to sit there, I bind up over my children, I bind up over this. You don't have to do that. When you become that channel for the Father creative consciousness, everything flows. It says even your field, it's like an electricity touching everything. You touch everywhere you go. You touch everybody where you go. And that's who Christ was. Christ was that channel for the Father creative consciousness. Okay. This was the intention behind creation. You were intended to express universal creative consciousness through your mind and heart. I, the Christ, have come at this time to show you how to do this. First of all, consider my state of consciousness when I performed my so-called miracles. I did not pray a set prayer. I simply asked the creative Father, radiating through my own consciousness, for whatever was needed. He said he didn't pray a set prayer. He asked the creative Father, I simply asked the creative Father, radiating through my own consciousness, for whatever was needed. I strongly realized and visualized the Father creative consciousness was a dynamic operating force which manifests itself through the visible world as, oh my gosh. I'm so glad I went over this again. This is so, oh my gosh, the spirit. So it says, I strongly realized and visualized the Father creative consciousness was a dynamic operating force which manifests itself through the visible world as creativity. This is what the Father creative consciousness manifests itself in this world as. This is what the Father creative consciousness manifests itself as. Creativity, intelligent design, growth, nutrition and nourishment, protection, healing, regeneration, fulfillment of every need, all within a system of law and order. I realized that the Creative Father consciousness would radiate all its nature through my consciousness to enter the consciousness of those who had asked for healing and sincerely believed they would receive it. So the onus was not only on Christ, the onus was also the faith. The person who asks for healing too has to have the faith. So it's not just Christ go out there and that's why that's how we realized who he realized what that's why he says he realized who when he was the people at you that faith has made thee old because they have to have the faith. They have to come without doubting for this healing to take place. Mm. I also knew that if they did not have faith and expectancy of healing, this type of negative consciousness would be influenced by the inflow of the nature of Father consciousness, and no healing would take place. I also realized that the healing work done by the Creative Father consciousness was really love made visible on earth. Oh, wow. Love made visible on earth. I also realized that all the work done by the Creative Father consciousness within the visible world was love made manifest, and I gave thanks. I also realized that all the work done by the Creative Father consciousness within the visible world was love made manifest, and I gave thanks. So all the work, nutrition, nourishment, protection, is all of that is the creative power of love made visible, and I give thanks. I realized that out of universal consciousness had come all the substance of the universe, and I give thanks. There's so many things to give thanks for. I realized that Father creative consciousness was the worker, and it was eternal and infinite, and nothing except the human mind could stop it from doing its work. Oh my gosh, nothing but the human mind could stop it from doing its work. Mm. I
Mm-hmm.
realized that the Father creative consciousness was a worker, and it was eternal, infinite, and nothing except the human mind could stop it from doing its work. We have to understand what this Father love, Father creative consciousness is. It's not what we have to that what we call God. We can't put him in a box like human attitudes, human behavior. We can't. In spite of what
Mm-mm.
we read in the word and this and that with the judgment and the killing and it's hard to read this and see God as that type of person. I can't, and that's why there's deeper meaning, and we have to study to show that say ourself approved, rightly dividing the word of truth. You know, it says only thing can stop him from working is our mind. You don't see nothing there if we all sacrifice 10 cows and we not do this and we not obedient and this way. You don't see anything like that, you know? Okay. Therefore, I rid my mind of any human feelings and thoughts. I knew that I was a perfect channel of Father love and knew that the perfect will of Father love will be accomplished in the person who needed healing. But note this, I also knew that whatever in that person's consciousness had brought about his crippled or maimed or diseased condition had been erased in his body for the time being. The question was, would this normal consciousness bring about a return of the condition divinely erased from the body? Therefore, I said to the person who had received healing, go your way and sin no more. I want you to know and believe with all your hearts that my state of consciousness, when on earth described to you in the body, in the above paragraphs, is a state of consciousness to which you should also aspire with all your mind and your heart. This is the words not just coming um read us to practice them in our daily lives. And this book, you can listen to it. It's the Christ Letters. You can follow with me, listen to it on YouTube. You can buy the book on Amazon and read it. Today it says to me, you can't be reader, listener. You have to be a doer of the word. And we read that even the disciples didn't understand what Christ was saying. And here is what understand what that creative divine creative power was. They couldn't understand it, not because they were dumb, but they didn't become as a little child. They were so indoctrinated. And we have to be careful we don't make the same mistake. It says, my experiences of enlightenment in this desert enabled me to achieve the Christ consciousness in a large extent whilst on earth. But you can follow in my steps if you have the will to do so. And I will surely be at hand to help you on your journey. You may feel my presence if you are sufficiently sensitive to do so. But if for some time you feel nothing, do not be cast down. Because as you do the work of changing your consciousness, you can be absolutely certain you will be tuning into my Christ consciousness, and I will be aware of all what is happening to you. Know that your purpose on earth is to ascend in spiritual consciousness until you transcend all the human wood which presently holds you back, until eventually you too can control the elements and become a master. Let me highlight this. And become a master. Let me put this in red so we can know why we're on earth. Know that your purpose on earth is to ascend in spiritual consciousness until you transcend all the humanhood which presently holds you back, until eventually you too can control the elements and become a master. Realize too that when world consciousness is fully attuned to Father creative consciousness, world consciousness, I'm telling you, you might listening to this, everybody's gonna rise. Just some's gonna rise quicker than some. And that's why I'm here. That's my job. That's my job, to help you grow in consciousness, to help you grow spiritually. That's what these letters are about. That's why I'm bringing this on my channel. Realize too that when world consciousness is fully attuned to Father creative consciousness, all things inimical to the perfect well-being of man will disappear. So I think that word inimical means anything that come against the perfect will of man will be. There will be no more malaria bearing mosquitoes, locusts to strip your crop, severe climatic condition, infections, virus, and everything else which presently cause problems for living things. You will live within a cloak of universal protection. When your consciousness is perfectly attuned to and in harmony with the Father love, then you too will be divinely protected and will become channels of creative design, growth, nutrition, and nourishment, protection, healing, regeneration, fulfillment of need, and law and order. It says, when your consciousness, what's your consciousness? Your mind. You get your consciousness, your mind power from the Father, creative power. And it says, when your consciousness is perfectly attuned to and in harmony with Father love, then you too will be divinely protected and will become channels of creative design, growth, nutrition, and nourishment, protection, healing, regeneration, fulfillment of need, law and order. Father love will be operational within your mind, heart, and your fears. I didn't read that well. When your own consciousness is perfectly attuned to and in harmony with Father love, then you too will be divinely protected and will become channels of creative design, growth, nutrition, and nourishment, protection, healing, regeneration, fulfillment of need, law, and order. Father love will be operational within your mind, heart, body, and your affairs. So the goal of your while you're on earth is to become come in line, be channel for the Father creative conscious. You you have to be attuned to that Father love and become, then you'll be divinely protected and become channels of creative design, growth, nutrition. And we've mentioned earlier that these growth, nutrition are manifestation of the creative Father, the creative Father consciousness in the physical realm. So when you see something grow, that's God. So when somebody say, "Oh, I don't believe in God," but you grow, you have food, you have nourishment, you have protection, you have regeneration, and these are the things of the Father creative power. These are the characteristics of the creative Father consciousness manifesting themselves in this realm at this time. Okay, and it will, let me see. Okay, it will be operation in all those whom you direct his power. That will be operational. Father love will be operational within your mind, heart, and body and your affairs. So, and it will be operation in all those to whom you direct its power. It is Christ's dearest longing. These letters should be swiftly publicized, and distributed to people seeking truth. If quoting from these letters, please state the source very clearly. Christ's letters from Christ's way. And that's it. And this is the end of chapter 1. And next week, we're going to go to, not chapter 1, letter 1. So next week, we're going to letter 2. And I hope you're excited as I am to continue to hear from Christ's perspective what really happened when he walked the earth and all the missing things we didn't read in the Gospels. So next week it's letter 2. I'm still gonna do on letter 1 things, some takeaway from letter 1 from deep ministry's perspective. There's so many gems in this. There's so many gems. And for those who are like me that like to read things and put it down and go over it, when, especially those days when you're struggling spiritually, those dry days. You pick them up and remember, because we're going to go through. We see that's the characteristics of creation, you know, the rhythm, the rhythm. And that's it for us tonight. That's it. It's been a blessing. I hope I don't even know. I know my sister Bev is here with me. Hey,
Yes,
Bev. I hope
yes,
you didn't
yes.
fall asleep. Oh, my
No,
God.
no.
No, so let me see. And those who joined me online, I don't know if they're still watching. I saw Minister Walker, Arlie, Annie from Connecticut, and those who I can't see some of my channels right now, but those who joined me tonight, thank you. Thank you. This was a blessing. I'm glad I get to go over it again.
Yeah.
And Father, creative consciousness. Here we are, your children, Father. We just read that we should get rid of all this negativity so we can fulfill our true purpose for being on the earth at this time. Father, we pray for your strength, Lord God, to be that channel for you. And Father, hear your children, Sister Bev, my
Yes.
sister, faithful
Amen.
woman of God. You know her more than I can. Me, your child, you know our struggles. But
Yes,
Father,
Lord.
as we try to hear these words, not just to hear, but do them, and know that we are our mind, Lord God, we are creators. We take our mind from that divine consciousness, and
Mm.
we are creators of our own, with whatever situation we find ourselves in. It's us. We have to go within. We have to look at
Mhm.
us. Father, thank you for my sisters and brothers and everyone who joined me tonight, God. And those, Father, as I always said, anyone who find this channel, they didn't come by themselves. They're your daughters, and you wanted them to hear this word, whether
Yes.
tonight or on another time when after this live broadcast, whoever come in touch with these words, Father, we know you sent them to hear it. So God, bless the heart, bless the mind. Lord God, let there not be a barrier between what they need to hear, what your will is for them, Lord God, by the flesh, by the ego. But Lord, let that barrier be torn down so you can flow through. Father, you said when you're flowing through, Father, we don't have to pray for our husband anymore. We don't have to
Mhm.
pray for our children. We don't have to pray for our animals. Father, that consciousness just flow directly through us, just
Yes,
flow
Lord.
directly through us and touch all our family members and our children and everyone around in our community and wherever we go. So, Father, help us to to cleanse ourselves, and we pray for direction, Father.
Yes,
Help
Lord
us
God.
to get rid of this mind, this barrier
Mm.
that hinder you from flowing in us, Lord
Yes,
God, so
Lord
we can
God.
live our divine purpose on this earth. Father, we thank you also from those who were normally here with us, Minister Patawa and all the regulars and everyone that wasn't able to make it tonight. We thank you for each and every one of your children, Father, because you said we're all going to come to this mystery, this knowledge. All of us, Lord. It may take some of us time, but we're all going to come to the knowledge of who we are. Thank you tonight. Thank you for blessing us. Thank you for your spirit leading and keeping us up this late. We've never been on this prayer line, on this ministry this late, but we thank you. And God, we're just here to do your will. Bless us, our
Yes,
homes
Lord.
tonight. Bless our families. Bless
Yes,
us as
Lord.
we give thanks. Amen.
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 Amen. Praise God.
Okay, my sister.
Good night. Have a good night,
Good
sister.
night.
Bless
Good
God
night.
bless.
Good night.
God bless. God
God
bless.
bless you.